Hi everybody, it's Rita Smith, the #1 food fairy. I'm just out here in my garden where I'm shortly going to be harvesting a ton of cilantro. People call it by different names. When you use the seed, they generally call it coriander. When you use the green leafy part of the plant, they generally call it cilantro, but people kind of use the terms interchangeably, which is fine. Okay, so cilantro and coriander, they're the same thing. It's so easy to grow. You just stick the plants in the ground, hopefully in May, like we hope that they get in May, and they grow like crazy, and you harvest them, they're gone soon. Cilantro is gone early. I'm trying to figure out how to make it stay later in the summer. Maybe I can trim it before it goes to seed or anything like that, but in any case, in about a month after planting, you'll get a ton of cilantro, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make coriander coconut chutney, which is just fantastic with Indian food. That's going to be my goal here. I don't jar it, I freeze it. It's not high acid, it's not high sugar, so you can't can it, but I am going to freeze a bunch, and then right now, immediately fresh. It's fantastic. In the winter time, you can get samosas from the grocery store, frozen samosas, or from any Indian restaurant, where you can get frozen samosas. And when you warm them up and then serve them with this chutney, it's fantastic. It's just fantastic. It's like going to Little India. My daughter loves it. Everybody loves it. So that's what I'm up to today. I'm going to harvest some of this cilantro that has grown so happily for a month, but it'll be gone soon. It'll be gone to seed very soon. I'm going to harvest it, make some chutney, and I'll show you how that's done. Okay? Talk to you in a minute. Hi, everybody. I'm back in the kitchen now. I cut my cilantro, my fresh cilantro, and the smell of it could just drive you wild. Like, it's just, oh my God. I could take a bath in this stuff. It smells so good. So that's a pretty good harvest of cilantro for the few plants that I planted. I cut them. I'm not gonna remove the leaves from the stem. I am actually gonna put the whole stem. I'm just gonna grind the whole thing up. Some recipes might tell you to pull the leaves from the stem. I think the stem is not only flavorful, but it also kind of adds some fiber and texture to the chutney. So I'm not even gonna clean it. I'm just gonna rinse it, and then I'm gonna blend it. In a blender, you would blend, maybe a cup or two at a time. If I use my grinder, I'll put it all through and it'll all come out ground up. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, fresh cilantro. Oh, the smell. It's just fabulous. It's just fabulous. But what else is important to the recipe for coconut coriander chutney is the coconut. I'm gonna put in, I use Grace creamed coconut is what it's called. There are different coconuts you could use. Some you pour out of a can, like coconut milk. This one is like really firm. This one is almost like a brick. I warm it up in warm water before I blend it, so I don't break my blender. It comes out pretty thick, but this is the Grace creamed coconut. And I'm gonna use, like, given all the amount of coriander that I have, I'm gonna use this whole thing. Sometimes I might only use a half or a third, but I'm gonna use this whole thing today, okay? So that's creamed coconut. I do put in ginger, and I would, under normal circumstances, chop my own ginger or run my own ginger through the blender. I love having fresh ginger in the house. But just as life happens today, I don't have fresh ginger in the house. So I'm gonna use jarred ginger and it'll be fine. I like it is, I've smelled it. Oh, it's got a tang, it's fresh. It's gonna be good. So I'll put some spoons of ginger. We'll taste that as it goes. The recipe online calls for lemon juice. I don't wanna use lemon juice, I'm using Nikki vinegar. I think the kick that comes from Nikki vinegar is, and the flavor, my family just loves it, and it's gonna make, as it has always made, this chutney just really flavorful and sharp. We want sharp. I will add salt and pepper, so as you will too. Clearly, most of the products here don't have any salt in them. Certainly the coriander doesn't. The olive oil doesn't. Maybe the others do. But I'm going to put in a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I'll test it as we're going to see what I need. The recipe calls for a green chili, and if I had a green chili, I'd use it, but I don't. And I'm not going into town. I'm not going to go buy a green chili, so I'm going to use a couple of drops of Jamaican Scotch bonnet sauce. It'll just give it a little bit of heat and bite. You want your coconut coriander chutney not to taste like sweeter cloying. It should have a little bit of a astringent bite to it. So the Nicky vinegar and the Jamaican hot sauce, any kind of hot sauce, just a drop or two of hot sauce is going to help that happen. Then the other thing that occurs is the olive oil. I'm going to use, like, at the most a few tablespoons of olive oil, not very much at all. But there is a bit of oil in coconut coriander chutney, and I freeze it. You'll see at the end, I freeze it in portions. When I thaw it, I tend to thin it with a tiny bit of olive oil or even mayonnaise, just to make it creamier and fluffier, just a smoother texture when you serve it to your guests. So there's going to be a tiny bit of olive oil in this. So we've got coriander, we've got ginger, we've got a little bit of Nicky vinegar, we've got a little bit of olive oil, a drop of Scotch bonnet sauce, which actually should be a fresh green pepper, but I don't have one, so that's how that's going to go. All of this will be mixed up together with the creamed coconut, which is a little bit on the, the hard side, so we're going to soften that before we do it. It's going to make a coriander coconut chutney that you can use all winter long with anything, frozen samosas, frozen egg rolls, anything that you buy or find through the winter that is delicious, that could use a coconut coriander chutney. This will do it, okay? So I'll come back in a moment to show you actually how I do all of this, but this is the ingredients panel right here, okay? Okay, so here we are with our harvested cilantro, or coriander. It goes by both names. I'm not sure. I think the seed is coriander and the plant is cilantro, but I just wanted to give you an idea of volume. The recipe that I'm using, which I'll put below in the notes, calls for 3/4 of a cup of tightly packed cilantro from the garden, 3/4 of a cup. And even if you just, loosely packed it, okay, let's call it a cup, I've got 10 cups here. So I'm going to make a pretty good size volume of coconut coriander chutney. I'm going to multiply the recipe at least by 10. But I will put the, single serving, single recipe measurements in the notes. In your life, you would probably do this either with a kitchen knife, like a French knife. You would just chop up a cup, or you might use a blender. But because I'm doing it in so much volume, I'm gonna whip it through the KitchenAid mixer just to make it, the grinder rather, to make it simple. Okay, so I'm making about 10 batches of coriander chutney. They're all gonna go into the freezer. I was thinking ahead. I bought my favorite Bernardin freezer jars, so that's what they're gonna go into. You could also use Ziploc bags. So this will be a 10 times recipe, and it'll get me through the whole entire winter, I think, or the whole entire year of 2016-2017 fiscal year for coriander chutney. Okay, so imagine you were doing this with a blender. It would take you quite a lot longer, actually, especially doing the 10 times. Generally speaking, for most recipes, you would, work to get the leaves off of the stems. But what I have found for this chutney recipe is that not only do I not mind having the stems, I think they actually add to the recipe. I think they actually add to the texture. They have the same flavor as the leaves. They're just not as tender as the leaves. So in some recipes or salads or raw things that you are making, you might really work to get the leaves off the stems. But the stems from my garden, they're so tender. They're so tender. They're so fresh and young and new that I don't see any purpose to leaving them out. So I'm just going to run them all through the grinder here. I'm going to do all 10 cups of this. Here it comes. It's so easy. You don't need to watch me do 10 cups of this, but when we come back, there will be 10 cups of coriander, a cilantro leaf that has gone through the KitchenAid grinder that will be ready to make chutney. Okay, so much like making pesto, look at that. 10 cups of cilantro, 10 cups plus. Maybe a cup and a half of ground cilantro. So this is why the flavor of these dressings and mixes and sauces is so intense, because it takes 10 cups of cilantro to make that much ground cilantro. What I'm gonna do now, I know the recipe is gonna call for olive oil. The recipe does call for olive oil. And the recipe calls for lemon juice, but I prefer a sharp Nicky vinegar, so I'm going to use that. I am going to run those two liquids through the mixer in order to clean all the cilantro that's in the grinder out. And it's actually a handy way to clear things out and not waste product. I am sure that is not too much olive oil. I might even need more, and if I do, I will add more. And then as far as the really sharp Nicky vinegar goes, I'm just gonna squirt that in. Ooh, I could drink this like straight out of the bottle. Actually, sometimes I do. Sometimes I actually pour a little glass of this vinegar and drink it. It's so delicious. It is just so sharp and so tangy and so delicious. Okay, so I'm going to say that more or less what has gone through the mixer here is done with. I'm going to turn this off. I'll empty it into the bowl, and then we'll move on to the creamed coconut and the other things that we want to put into our coriander chutney. Okay, so now I actually am going to use my blender. I have run at least 10 cups of fresh cilantro through the KitchenAid grinder, and it's come up at about a cup. I rinsed the grinder with a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of Nicky vinegar, because that would clean out all the leftover, cilantro that was wedged in the grinder. So it's all here. Look at that. That's 10 cups plus. Look, I would say it's probably even more than 10 cups, but okay, so there's the 10 cups of cilantro in the blender. This is the Grace Pure Creamed Coconut. I put it in warm water for a little bit to make it easier to come out of the package. And I think one of these will be enough, but if one of these is not, because if you were just making one batch, you would use like a few tablespoons of creamed coconut or coconut milk, but I'm making 10 batches, so I'm going to use the whole entire package. And if after I have blended it, it does not seem like enough, then I will warm up the second package as well. I see some recipes actually call to put in like, chopped coconut, not coconut milk or coconut, creamed coconut, but chopped coconut, which I think would be really fun. I have some of that in my cupboard, but I'm not gonna spring that open until I see how this goes. So let's put, okay, there we go. That's so delicious. And we'll give that a quick blend. We're going to put in some more olive oil for sure. Okay. That's pretty thick. Let's see what happens if I get a spatula or a fork or something to kind of move it around in there. You know what, actually, just put a little bit of oil in. Okay, a little bit of olive oil. There we go. Now, this recipe is nowhere near where it needs to be without ginger. So I've got this jarred ginger because I don't have any fresh. I could have bought fresh, but anyway, I have some jarred ginger. And my vinegar, my Nicky vinegar. Okay, the recipe actually calls for lemon juice. I prefer Nicky vinegar. Okay, so that's where that's gonna go. Let's whip that up a bit. More olive oil while it's mixing. Now, I'm going to stop it and check for flavor. I have not added any salt at all to this recipe, nothing. No salt at all. I've put in ginger, but it might need more ginger, and I have yet to add the hot pepper sauce, right? If you had a green chili in your fridge, you would put that in. I don't, so I'm going to use a tiny bit of Jamaican Scotch bonnet sauce. Oh my God, you could kill a person with that. But let me just taste it as it is. Oh, the cilantro is delicious. I don't think it needs any more coconut. I don't think it needs any more oil. I'm definitely going to add some salt. I'm going to add more ginger for sure. Could use more ginger. I'll get a clean fork for that. So we'll add a good, I'm going to add about half of this jar of ginger actually. Could use more ginger. And salt. That's probably about a half of a teaspoon of salt. And now I'm going to add, I won't even measure, I'm going to say I'm going to add about a half of a teaspoon of Jamaican Scotch bonnet sauce, which is, maybe even more than it equals one hot chili. But we'll see how that goes. Let's mix it up and see how that goes. Okay, the salt definitely changed everything. I'm going to end up adding this whole jar of ginger. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wash out this ginger jar with vinegar. Pour it all in. And I might actually put a little bit more hot sauce in there too. Okay. I'm going to say that is, oh wow, really, really good. 10 batches, 10 amounts of the recipe that I used of coriander coconut chutney. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to jar it up and I'll be back to see you in a moment. Okay, so we're back with our coriander coconut chutney in these great freezer containers from Bernard, which I really, really like. I really like these containers. They're a perfect size and they're plastic, so you don't have to worry about them popping in the freezer. Also, they're stackable. So we took more than 10 cups of cilantro, and from that we got not even 6 cups of chutney. And that's after we added the cream coconut, the ginger, everything else. So you can see that the flavor is going to be really intense. The cilantro flavor is going to be super intense. And that's as you would want it to be. There are so many dishes, Indian dishes, something for, you know what, if you get samosas in the grocery store and you warm them in the oven, but you serve them with your own homemade sauce, wow, all of a sudden everything is, you know, like authentic. It tastes so good, and it just adds a great kick to everything that you might be serving, either Indian food or Chinese food. I don't know, maybe we'll find a Canadian food to put it on. When I thaw one of these in the wintertime and serve it, I thin it out a little bit with some olive oil or maybe even a spoonful of mayonnaise. It makes it creamier and fluffier. It seems to wake it up when it comes out of the freezer. You just kind of, I would say, let's just say mayonnaise. Take a spoon of mayonnaise and stir it all together. When you put it on the table, then it has the feeling like you just made it, like just right then, you know. It's delicious. So it's Rita Smith, #1 Food Fairy, signing off. Be confident in the kitchen. Be confident in the garden. Don't be afraid to try new things. What's the worst that could happen? You screw it up, you throw it out, you know, you do it again. This is actually one of the things that I found over the years. I was really glad I had a run at it. I had some of the food from an Indian restaurant, and I thought, that's so good. I wonder if I could make that at home. Well, you can make it at home, as long as, you know, you're patient to try and grow your own coriander. You don't want to do it with store-bought coriander because that's going to get expensive. But if you're growing cilantro in your garden and you have tons in June, as every year I find in June, it goes to seed really quickly. So if you don't use it, it's going to be wasted. But have a run at some recipes and freeze them, and then in the middle of winter, wow, it's like summer in your mouth, you know, when you taste this stuff in the middle of winter. So good luck. You know, try new things. What's the worst? You wasted $5. What's the worst? You know, go for it. Be confident in the kitchen.
I'm so sick of reality TV. I'm so tired of my girlfriend ignoring me. I sure could use a little bit of company, some time away from all the wannabe celebrities.